Okay, I think I am live. Hey, James.
Hi. I came back from Philippines.
Hi, everyone. I'm gonna put some earphones in, maybe. Hi, Troy. Hey, Chike. Oh, look, people. So maybe I should start reading, huh? Or something like that. Welcome, people, to Afrolit Some Frontières. I'm sideways. I'm filming sideways. It looks good to me. Hold up. Let me tell this. So that. Is that better? All right, Kalaf. Is this good? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everyone turn their computer sideways. I don't know what the problem is. Damn. I prefer landscape. Okay. All right, people. It's good to see you. Well, your names. Hey, Nana. Okay, so apparently the way this works is, and some of you have been here, so um Zuki, stop it with the frowny man. Okay, frowny man in the house, frowny man in the house. I read for a little bit and then Mr. Benne will come in and ask some questions. So I think I'll probably start with some poetry if that's okay with everyone. I didn't want to do any kind of old stuff, so this is all new. Yeah. And this is called A Concise Geography of Heartbreak. And then I will read a little bit from the novel I'm working on right now called Asuka, just a little section from it. And then I guess, I'll respond to some questions and stuff. I don't want to make it too much reading and too little talking, because really I'm here to talk to you guys. And this is the most people I've had in a room for yonks. I mean, yeah. I think probably the last time I was around this many people was at Frankie's place in New York when he hosted a group of people for me just to hang out. So thank you, Frankie. Yeah, Lei, I feel the love, man. I feel the love, okay? All right. So, a concise geography of heartbreak. Human. It starts from the skin, the same way Europeans came from shore, smiling, setting up trade posts. When they whisper in your ears, nibble on your lobes, sending a shiver running through you. That's Stanley, pretending to be an explorer, but under contract to King Leopold. A finger runs down your chest, raising goosebumps. Your lips lock, and your oil reserves run free. Environmental. You are learning a new language. Every limb of your body possessed by the fire of this love that smelts gold, aluminium, copper, tin, and iron ore. You run when they ask, doing do-for-love things, making their lives easier. Meanwhile, they are with friends planning how to deceive you, use you. It's the Berlin Conference in kisses. They're all up inside you. You are all up in your feelings, sappy as sliced rubber trees. Physical. You want to drop some seeds in shit. Hell, maybe you do. One or two until some night, the forest fires start. It's like the worst kind of heartburn. All that BS you've swallowed. All that BS. You start an independence movement. Define limits, draw borders. They come pleading. They offer enticements. Ambassadors make compelling cases, seeding tears in your eyes. But once you've seen their true purpose, you can't unsee it. You must save your heart, even if it means you will hurt. Even if the new country you carve is an assembly of broken things, it is yours. You will compose an anthem and sing it like an orgasm. You will sew a flag from fragments of new insight. Fly it as high as you hold your head. That's a concise geography of heartbreak, which, I mean, Africa we've had lots of. Look, more people. Hi, people. Hi, Asiedu. Hi, Fred. Hi, gosh. Okay. Yes, I see black porcelain in the house. I see some hearts. Remy's asking if I can hit you with a frown. Hi, everyone. Nice. Beautiful. Okay, so, I'm going to read you a little section from the novel I'm working on. It's called Azúcar, which is sugar in Spanish. And strangely, it is going to be published, in the Western world in French first. The first publication is going to be in Ghana, because the Western world is not ready for my crazy yet in English. So it's going to be published in French and Spanish before English, because we're still negotiating on English. People are scared of my madness, but I'm used to this. So this is Suncoast Usas. Fumaz is blue hills kissing an orange sky, where tobacco that dries red as blood grows. If you plunge your hand into its rich soil, raise it to your nose and smell it, the land will dwell in your heart forever. Hi, Maza. That's not part of the book, by the way. I just couldn't help myself. When you leave, it will turn your face bitter. When you return, it will fill your cheeks with light. The barks of the trees carry ingrown messages from rebels who sheltered in our forests, battled the Spaniards, Portuguese, Usas, frustrated the neo-colonialists, and toppled the Usas-backed capitalites. If you run your hand along the rough of a tree's history and close your eyes, you will see Mambi-inspired young men crawling through the undergrowth, sheltering under umbrella canopies, measuring gunpowder, sharpening makeshift arrows, buttressing their courage via sips of fermented fruits of the forests that envelops them. You will hear the emergence of radio waves, the slip of combatants closer to the villages that have replaced clusters of trees. Feel the feverish, doomed love that grows between these green, black-clad men and the girls that hide their guns. Fetch water for them to drink. there are offspring in the offing. The entire nation was born between that soil and these trees. Emelina Santos has grown up with these stories. The myth of Fumaz, received by whispers through spoonfuls of 6-ounce soft frijoles, infused with garlic, pork, and red onions, and mixed with saffron rice. From the talk of her mother's centrifugal embrace, it resides beneath her tongue. Where her father, Juan's memories are vague illustrations of a 7-year-old, her mother's are vivid, intricate canvases awash with longing. It's the longing of a 12-year-old who has lost her motherland, her mother to heartbreak. A death of causes unknown that have roots in the disappearance of her one true love, Gabo. He left no notes. All that remains of him is a child, now alone, that he named Ale. She is 5 when he leaves. She will not remember him. After he is gone, the stories start. My kids are around, so I might be doing some weird hand movements and stuff, but don't worry. They're trying to dance in front of me to distract me, but it's not working.
Mom, Dad.
He was in love with a woman named Ale before he met the child's mother. She was dark, she was light, she was kind, she was mean, she was calculating, she was sincere. She had rejected him, he had resisted her. It is hard to know what is true. What is true is that Ale's mother loved Gabo with all her heart, loved him as much as the soil she was born on, that he held her and looked in her eye every night and made love to her, that he wrapped himself in her dark skin as morning came, that if he ever showed signs of being unhappy, she blamed herself. She asked what she could do. She even asked if he wanted to be free. What is true is that he left one afternoon to buy bread and never returned. And in 7 years, Ale's mother was reduced to dust. No doctor could heal her, no soothsayer could soothe her, and no rumor could make her understand how her heart could give so much love and be left bereft. If her family could celebrate the report of Gabo dying in a bar after his Ale betrayed him, it only made her hurt more. She loved him, and in spite of the hurt, she wanted him happy, not heartbroken, not dead. Still, there was no stopping her own decline, and the dark soul she loved to clasp in her palms was soon in the hands of her daughter, racked by tears, who tossed them on top of the wood of her coffin. With Gabo untraceable, Ale was adopted by her mother's younger sister, Susie, who raised her in the blue hills of the village, the land that had nurtured the family for generations. But these tales are not fairy forged, so I don't have to tell you that there's sour and there's sweet. Susie soon meets a man of her own, Vincente. He is one of those who has decided to leave, that Fumaz is not where his future lies. It's across the seas in Usas. Susie's heart is hooked and stretched and split between her love of this land, high in the east of Fumaz, where the tobacco dries like blood, and her yearning for this man who makes her entire body burst into flames. She is unhinged. Her pondering has her walking the land, her feet bare, drawing knots and crosses across the soil. There is never a winner. Preoccupied, she doesn't notice Vincente's tourist eyes, how they like to settle on the 14-year-old Ale. It takes Susie a year to decide she will move with him. Yes, Emelina's mother's stories are imbued with the longing of a child forced to leave a land she loves, to become a woman before her time. They will hold you captive even if they do not break your heart. Their longing will bind you with restlessness. Bah.
Did you read mine?
No, I haven't finished, so you have to behave, okay? Come here. Okay. The first time, sorry for that break. The first time he touches her, it's like an accident. He reaches past her to grab a beer from the fridge and his arm brushes her left breast. Tia Susie is right beside him, but Ale catches a look in his eye that makes her uncomfortable. She is not naive. She has heard the girls talk in school. The things men do to try to turn you on. What to do if you want to ride in a Ford convertible. how to look after yourself at the makeout spot, how to snag a cool guy. He could easily have asked her to pass him the beer. The second time, there's no mistaking his motives. He squeezes past her while she's ironing. She can feel his hardness through his pants, and there is plenty of space in the laundry room. She turns with the iron held high, and he flees, laughing. She tells Tia Susie, but there is no proof. Her aunt is too in love to believe her, calls her ungrateful. She points to her Cynthia Robinson-inspired afro, accuses Ale of being misled by her friends trying to unsettle her marriage. Her rage rustles the leaves of the Suncoast flora. Will you stop at nothing to move back to Fumaz? Ale is stunned, but there's little she can do to convince Tia Susie. Then Vincente next catches her alone. When Vincente next catches her alone, it is clear Tia Susie has told him about her complaint. He is unrepentant. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, he whispers, placing his finger under her chin. Then he walks away. For months, Ale's life becomes a game of cat and mouse. Vincente is unrelenting, and Tia Susie can't see anything with clarity. She's working 2 jobs and perfecting her English. She is often too tired to do much except watch TV, with Vincente caressing her back and staring at Ale. The school nurse, also from Fumaz, notices Ale's change in demeanor and invites her for coffee. Asuka, she asks. It is not for us to know if it is the tone of her voice or the fact that she asks Ale in the language of the land she has left, the land she misses so much. If it is the nurse's skin, dark as her mother's, or the gap between her grand central incisors, as prominent as her grandfather's. But Ale cries with the weight of the waterfall her mother used to bathe under in the Mikaya Segundo. The whole story comes tumbling out as the nurse holds Ale's face against her ample chest. You don't have to stay, you know. This is not like Fumaz where we solve everything at home. You should report to the school. They will help you get a shelter. Ale feels like a stone that suddenly has wings. I can leave? Yes. I even know someone from the home at Suncoast Bridge Center. I can ask. But my Tia, you can still see her. You will just be away from the house. I think I'll stop there. Thanks guys for listening. That's Sun Dude in the back. Let me say hello. And this is the baby. Feet. Oh. Okay. So I think we can kind of have a conversation now. It's not, we can't be kind of doing too much reading. Let me bring Chike in here in a minute. Yeah. Yeah, it is a bit like that. It is a bit like that.
I haven't finished my food. But
Hey, Chike Frankie, I wanted to see what you were wearing. How you doing? I can't hear you, I can see you. Look at you. Are you running away? Maza, thanks for the question. I don't think there's an easy way to do it. You know, the kids. I mean, obviously I'm separated, so I don't have the kids all the time. So I only have them now and then, and so I've kind of learned. Initially, it was very difficult when I left their mum because my life balance changed because I didn't know what it was. I'd forgotten what it was like to live alone. I was with her for 14 years, so that automatically changes your life a little bit. So I had to find a new rhythm. But when they're here, the time is theirs. You know, when the time is theirs largely. So I had to tell them that I would have to be on Instagram for an hour, and they were cool with that.
Dad, please can you open this?
And
Get off my back.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of male writers have, you know, have the luxury of patriarchy in the sense that people don't, you know, the wives or the partner support them and nobody asks any questions. I think when you're separated, you have to take on the full parenting when the kids are with you. But also, I mean, I was a fairly active dad when I was with my partner. I did the nappy changing and the cooking. I used to cook for the week on the weekend, and then we would defrost it later and stuff like that. What do you need to get, my baby? Yeah. So, so that's it. Thanks for the question. Hold on one second. How does your frown impact on your writing? It sharpens it. And somebody asked where I write. I write all the time. I mean, I keep little notebooks, and so I often lose my writing. And I write a lot in bed, in just the same way I used to read when I was a kid. I think I mirror it, and I write longhand. Longhand means I write it on with a pen and paper. I'm explaining longhand to my son. Living in Ghana, London. Again, living in Ghana has the benefit of, I suppose, it's a slower pace of life, and so I get a lot of my ideas written down. Whether something wants to be a poem or prose, I just start with the idea and start writing it. And if the idea hasn't been fully fleshed out in a poem, then sometimes it will become a short story. And if the short story is not enough to embrace it, it might become a novel or a novella. Sometimes something will become a song. I mean, there's a whole load of things that. Good question. So 2 questions. Learning as judge of the Commonwealth Prize. I've been judging prizes for a long time. So, I mean, for me, it's just something I need to take a break and read. I dedicate myself to reading for the prize. And I always try to remember that I'm reading as the kid who used to read in bed. I want to be entertained. So you can do all the pyrotechnics you want, but if the story is not sound, then I'm not going to be moved by it. I think I've judged at least 12 competitions. Yeah. So Marza, how does writing longhand shape your thinking writing? It's really interesting. I can do nonfiction writing directly onto the computer. And I don't know why that is. With creative writing, I like to draw, and I draw maps and arrows and stuff like that. And so writing longhand really helps me with that. And I think that's just my process. And also, I suppose because I write in bed, probably that also then makes longhand more suitable, because it's very difficult to kind of be on your front trying to type. It will do all kinds of bad things to your back. But with a little notebook, I can turn and turn and turn according to what I need to do, really. How do I know when you're done with a poem? That's from Mikian. I mean, at some point I stop. I don't think a poem is ever really done, because sometimes I'm happy with it, and then later on when I'm reading it, I feel like I want to change something. And I think that's the thing with all work, is it's alive. It has a life on the page, and then it has a life in the interaction it has with the people who are reading your work. So if I'm able to reconcile myself with that idea, then I'm less hard on myself about when something is finished, or if something is finished. If somebody likes it, then it's good enough for them. I type my own handwritten stuff. It's also another level of editing for me. So that, I suppose, links with the Martha question. So when I'm typing, there's a level of kind of editing that happens when I'm typing. And so my first typed drafts tend to be the equivalent of somebody's second draft if they're working straight on a computer. Yeah. What do I wish people would ask me about my work? I mean, it's just a blessing to have people ask me about my work in the first place. I do think what's interesting is that the way we talk about experimental writing. A lot of my work is experimental, but until you're writing speculative fiction, people don't think of the work as experimental. I think of Marza, for instance, your last book, The Shadow King. I mean, the structure, which is almost operatic and stuff like that. That's hugely experimental in my book. But you know, you won't get the kinds of questions that people get when they're writing experimental or speculative fiction. So, Khalaf, is there a difference writing in Ghana or in London? It depends on what I'm writing about. I tend to write about spaces that don't actually exist but are inspired by other spaces. Now, the closer that space relates to a space like the closer the place is in its in the way it looks, in the way it operates to somewhere like Ghana, the easier it is for me to write about it when I'm in Ghana. But at the same time, distance gives you different perspectives and different ways to write about a space. So sometimes the distance actually can give you more texture when you're writing about a space. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that I am sentimental about where I write. Afi, hold on one second. Afi Keba. Now. Thank you very much. Is there a novel in the works? So him, the writer, yes. I mean, so the novel that I'm working on, which is almost finished, is what I just read from Asuka. And yeah, I think it will be out fairly soon in Ghana on a limited run, and then it will be out in French. I'm not exactly sure. I have a wonderful translator in France, Sika Fakambi, who translated my first book, Tale of the Bluebird. And she's working on it as we speak. So I'm sure that's going to be wonderful. The Spanish hasn't started. Yeah. We need to have people's kids on their panels with them. TJ, you don't need the frown. There's the I don't, son, you're gonna hurt yourself. No, don't do it. I have the foldy brow, which I got from my dad, and it makes it look like I'm frowning a lot. But it actually was one of my favorite things about my father, which is really weird because it usually went up when he was questioning my BS. But it was one of my favorite things about him, and I seem to have inherited it. If you had to burn 3 books and use the ashes for a cure for coronavirus, which would these be? Oh my gosh. I don't think we should go down that route, First the environment, the smoke, and then, the paper's already been used, so somebody might like those books. But yeah, no, let's not go there. I have a mean streak in me. I bury it, but if it comes out, it bangs real hard. Son, can you pass me that notebook over there?
I don't know. Hey, which one?
The one I write the poems in. Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Who would I have in my literary threesome? Do you know what? I mean, I'd have to test a few people before I decide. Oh, come on. Can you talk about some of your inspirations? Music, poetry, even dance. Music is a huge influence on my work. Because of wait, Fifi, okay, Afi. So yeah, music has been a huge influence in my work because so my father used to play saxophone. My father used to play the saxophone before we were born. And when my older brother was born, at some point he was broke and pawned his saxophone. He was broke and pawned his saxophone. And so we grew up with him playing music in the house and talking about music, but we never heard him play. And in that absence, there's a great deal of content. So I have a huge respect for music and musicians and their process, and you know, so one of the things that I try to do is in my work is kind of follow the philosophy behind the recording of Kind of Blue, which has this element of chaos and order at the same time. Yeah, so Chike is asking me if I would prefer Akpetashi or Red Label. Akpetashi every time, yeah? Akpetashi. Kalaf. Yeah, Kalaf has his thing on lock. You know, Kalaf is a superstar in many ways. You know, we stand Kalaf. Hold on a second. Have I missed anyone? If I've missed your question, you can put it back on. Yeah, you can put it back on. You can put it back on, and I will see it, because they scroll while I'm answering other people's questions. Which continental literatures? I mean, one of the continental literatures I've really been looking into a lot is the Lusophone. The work from the Lusophone writers, like Kalaf, who we just mentioned over here. And I mean, after my book was published in France and I started to do lots of literary kind of salons in French, I met a lot of the French contemporary writers, and they've been great. They've been really great in kind of widening the world and perception of African writing, because what tends to happen is our perception of African writing gets shaped, especially when we're Anglophone, through the Anglophone world, and when we're Francophone, through the Francophone world. And as you've probably seen, Mukoma Wangugi's wonderful book on the rise of the African novel, and once you've seen that, you realize just how wide the scope is. And I think we all need to do a bit more work in engaging with the other literatures of the continent. The Arabophone, there's writing Hausa, which we haven't even begun to dig into, and gosh, I'm sure there's some beauties in there. Writers Project of Ghana asking me if reading as a judge for prize has changed my reading in general. No, I'll tell you what, my reading changed, or has been changing constantly, and my writing, because I'm an editor. The thing that actually takes more of my time, the reason why I don't write books as quickly as I might have ideas, is because I work as an editor, and editing work really changes my writing and influences my writing a lot more than judging prizes. Judging prizes is just fun for me. And editing sharpens my own work. And I have a very simple rule for editing anyone's work. I will not edit someone's work if I don't believe they could be better than me. And so that helps me to kind of weed out stuff that might be good, but I just think, listen, you know, if I'm going to take time to edit your work, then you're going to have to show me that you're going to be the one carrying everything for the continent. Bissy, you had a question. Could you put it back up? I missed it. The Ghana Jollof, Nigeria Jollof is not even a question, so I'm not going to answer that one. I mean, and we have Wache, so we don't even need the Jollof argument. Bissy, which fictitious characters would you happily tie the knot with? Do you know what? I've never tied the knot, so I don't know that if I can't do it in fact. I don't know if I can do it in fiction. But I'll look into it. I'll look into it. I mean, yeah, there are lots of characters I've fallen in love with in fiction, but I don't know. So Missy, how has writing influenced me as an editor? I mean, I think I partly answered that question. So writing, first of all, influences who I choose to edit, because I won't edit someone I don't believe can be a better writer than I am. But I also think that because I'm a writer, I'm very sensitive to, I mean, which all editors are because they love reading anyway, but I think when you read and write, sometimes the solutions in terms of getting something to work well, you might have more options coming to your head because you're a writer. The first book I fell in love with, So Long a Letter, Mariam Abba. Will you do a non-fiction book in the near future? Yes, Chike, I'm actually writing a book on fatherhood. I'm writing a book on fatherhood because, of course, because I left my ex, I've been forced to father in a different way. And so I kind of want to write a book about that, how you still can let your children know you love them, how you can fully be engaged with their lives and stuff like that. And kind of exploring fatherhood in a historic perspective as well. My grandfather, for instance, my father grew up in a separated home. We grew up in a very stable home, which my father, I think, made sure that he would create because he didn't have that. But he was also the reason why, as much as I was afraid of leaving my ex, I made the decision to leave, because I thought if my father can come out of a broken home, so to speak, and be so great, then my leaving doesn't necessarily mean that my children won't turn out fine. Tell us about your work as a publisher. My work as a publisher is really, I've been editing for 20 odd years. I've been running a publishing company for 19 years, mainly poetry. I also do some fiction. I've worked with some wonderful, wonderful writers. Hold on one second. I think somebody is coming on. I'm going to bring Mr. Bennett on so that he can moderate some of these questions, because I'm missing some of them. Thank you, Chike. Hey, sorry, I almost missed the request, but I was looking for it later on, but I think this is the perfect time. So okay. thanks for doing this. Yeah, because I'm missing them. They're just kind of flashing past the screen. And good to see you.
That's fine. Yeah, good to see you too, Nii. It's been a while.
Yeah. So my oldest daughter, she's actually my critic. So the work that I've written for generally, she's the one that reads and asks me the questions and stuff like that. So in my last book, I give her some big props. Okay, so now that you're here, you can moderate the questions.
The questions, okay. I think there was a question you missed, and then it was someone asked, why are you so generous with young writers?
Am I?
Yeah, I think it's because you often run a lot of workshops. I know for a fact here in Ghana you run a lot of workshops. So
yeah, well, you know, writing is a very lonely game, or it can be, and I don't see why we should make it any worse if we can make it better. There's also the fact that I have benefited from the help of others. You know, when I decided to leave my job in industry and become a writer, I walked straight into the office of Atukwe Okai in Legon, and I said, you know, I'm thinking of quitting my work to write. You're gonna break the bed. So you know, this is some stuff I've written. What would you say? Would you be happy to mentor me? And he said to give him a few days. I mean, so literally his response was not, who's this weird guy who's coming to my office? Like, okay, well, give me a few days and come back and we'll talk. And so I went back a week later. So this is me. I drove from work in Tema, came to Accra, drove to Legon, and went back and he sat me down and he went through my work and he said, you know, this is some really wonderful stuff. It was a play. And he actually gave me the title that became the title of the play when it was produced in London, which is Walking Waterfall. And he said, you know, this is really wonderful, but this thing you're asking me about whether or not to leave work, I can't tell you whether or not to leave work. You're going to know that in your heart, but I can tell you that your work is good enough for you to be a writer.
Wow.
And that, you know, so I got that from him, and then after that, I would send stuff to him all the time and stuff like that, and we just talk. And literally, the best advice he gave me, this question might come up, the best advice he gave me, which is some of the best advice I've had as a writer, is he said, Atukwe Okai, somebody missed the name. He just said, listen, people, it may take time for people to understand your work, but you will never get the time back if you just spend the time waiting. So just keep writing and writing and writing. So when the opportunities come, you've got material. You've got material in heaps that you can use. And that's kind of what I've done. You know, I keep writing, and I write on my own timetable. So when I sign book deals, I don't do multiple book deals. I do single book deals, just so that I have my own time. And I make the time to work with other writers, and I just trust that I will have the time to kind of complete the projects that I want to complete. And working with younger writers keeps you plugged in with what's happening. You know, the world is changing so fast. So, and also, you don't write in all genres. You know, I mentor people who write science fiction, and it makes me have to think about, okay, what are the things that are important in this genre? And by the same token, you kind of say, what's important in my genre? What can I borrow from this genre? And so in a lot of my work, I'm hybridizing. You know, I'm using different genres because of the work I do with younger writers. And I don't think it's necessary to trumpet the work you do with people, but I think it's important to do the work, and I try and encourage other writers to do the work. And I'm very honest with people about writing to me for help. I'll say, listen, it might take me a week to get back to you, it might take a year, but I'm not going to ignore you. It just might take a long time. And if you're going to get mad, I'm just letting you know now, because my timetable is my timetable.
Yeah, definitely.
You know.
Yeah, I get you. And then there's a follow-up question, and someone wants to know, what is the best attitude a young writer can have whilst being edited? Is it to, have an open mind, or to stick to what you believe? You know, sometimes when you're writing, you have an idea of how your story should come out. And so what do you think is the best attitude a young writer should have when he's being edited?
You know, I think young writers should have an attitude of openness, but at the same time, it's vitally important that they have self-knowledge. Now, why do I say self-knowledge? A lot of young writers will say they want to stick to something, and it's just because they've written it and they're sentimental about it, but not because there's actual storytelling reasons for holding on to things. Some, people will love a line that they wrote, and they love the line so much they won't take it out, even if it's throwing the whole story out of whack. Now, self-knowledge will teach you that the line is not important. The line is not important. The story is important. Maybe you started and that line gave you a beautiful story. Now that the story is there, that line is no longer important. It's scaffolded. It has to go. And only self-knowledge can tell you that. I don't believe in taking everything an editor tells you wholesale. And I actually don't trust writers when I edit them and they want to take everything I say, because I'm like, it's your book. It's not mine. Okay?
Yeah, got you.
Even the story. As a reader, I'm an editor, but I'm also a reader. And reading is a creative process. People forget this. Reading is a creative process. That's why no two people get the same thing from a book. And that's why no two people get the same thing when they watch a film. So there's a creative process. There's an emotional process. We have our own triggers. Okay, so somebody who's sentimental about roses is going to react to roses in the book differently to how somebody who's not sentimental about roses will.
Yeah.
And as a writer, you can't control these things. What you can control is the story you're telling. And so you also have to recognize when the editor is reading things into your writing that are not there. And if you have the self-knowledge, you can point out and say, listen, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And if the writing is sound, then you'll be able to prove why that should be there. I mean, for my first book, I had the most wonderful lunches and arguments with Ella Alfrey, because there were things that she didn't understand that I was doing. The only reason why we were able to have those conversations and have them as honest conversations and not fall out, and she's still one of my great friends, is because I was able to say to her, okay, this thing you don't understand, you know, you don't understand it because you're used to, I mean, one of the things that editors are taught is that you have to understand everything in the book. I think that's a fallacy, and it affects all of us editors, and we have to kind of also remember to pull that back when we're editing. We don't have to understand everything. Mystery is part of a story. But what I did also say is, okay, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm trying to create this feeling. And the reason why I'm trying to create this feeling is this. And then sometimes if something, so for instance, why would I keep words like Tinebois, tree in there, or say Iburuburu? And now if somebody asks me those questions and they're talking in the context of what the Europeans have taught us to call vernacular, which is actually our own languages, I can respond and say, well, if you read science fiction and you read a word you don't understand, you question it. And then the editor says no, and I said, well, let's do the same for our own languages. If people are interested,
that makes sense.
To understand. So this is the self-knowledge. If you've read and you understand how you read and you understand how you create, then you can answer those questions. But you should certainly be open to every question that an editor asks you. And if you can't answer the question, there's a problem. It means there's a problem with your story. And a lot of people don't like to accept.
Yeah, I get that.
So you have to with an open mind, but you have to know yourself as well.
I think that's fair. I think it's good advice. And also, it's quite interesting that you're a writer, you're an editor, and you're also a publisher. But we just want to know, how do you respond to well, or I mean, you've seen both sides of the game. So how do you respond to having your works edited by another person?
I love having my work edited. I have so many blind spots with my work. I can only do decent work if I'm edited. So I have friends I send my work to read in addition to the editors. And I don't have enough friends that I send my work to read because actually it should be way more. But you know, the thing about being an editor and a publisher as well is that you then have to cultivate your writing friendships quite carefully, because sometimes people will ask you favors that you have to refuse, and then they might take offense. And so there's a cultivation of links that and relationships that becomes complicated when you have multiple roles. You know, I also produce events and I judge competitions, and sometimes I'm judging my own friends in competitions. So, you know, keeping the secrecy and the confidentiality, all of these disciplines I have to keep really close to my chest. But I love having my work edited. I love having the questions because it makes the work better. And it also tells me if I'm achieving what I want to achieve. Because if somebody is seeing something in the work more than some of the things that I would like them to see in the work, then it means there's something wrong with how I'm crafting the story. And I need to do some work on it.
Okay, that's fine. What's your best book? What's the best book you've ever read? I mean, if someone should walk up to you and say, recommend a book for me to buy, what would be the first book? I mean, aside the books you've written, though.
Well, you know, I mean, I wouldn't recommend my book as just one book, and I think I wouldn't recommend one book to anyone because it's too narrow. You know, this is partly the problem with the way that African writing, or writing from the continent of Africa, is struggling to find audiences in the West that understand it, because the West has been brought upon one kind of writing and reading. And when I say one kind, I don't mean it so narrow. It's still got expansiveness, but it doesn't have expansiveness in ways of thinking about the world. Okay, so if we have a way of thinking where we don't think our ancestors are gone, they're still with us, and somebody thinks that's weird, then it starts coming to the judgment of the quality of a work when it shouldn't come into the judgment of the quality of a work. So if I'm recommending books to people, in the same way I would never recommend one book. I always tell people when I'm asking them to read books, I mean, for instance, I will always add in the list 2 very short books. Giovanni's Room by Baldwin, and So Long a Letter by Mariama Ba. I always add those 2 books in. But beyond that, I add other things, and I ask them what they're trying to do, what they're interested in. If they're interested in language, the musicality, if they're interested in plot, because different people do things differently. I mean, you read Ayikwei plotting is incredible. The musicality of Carlos Fuentes is incredible, but he also plots. And then you go to the other end where it's musicality over plot, you know? Please stop killing yourselves for like 5 minutes until I finish, okay? You know, so that's the thing. You know, of contemporary writers, you know, I would recommend people read something by Kamla Shamsi, who I think is an incredible writer. You know, both plot, musicality, and political reach. You know, I mean, Mars's new book is incredible. Frankie's book is incredible for dealing with, for writing in the face of what you know is sure hatred to come, right? Mona Atawi, you know, there's courage. So I recommend books for language, for plot, for courage, for understanding how time shifts. Books that were considered scandalous that aren't scandalous anymore. You know, you think of something like Mongo Betty, Christ de Bomba, the poor Christ of Bomba. You know, people didn't want to see that book, but you read that book, it's the most glorious satire and joy of storytelling. So that's the thing. I would never recommend one book, and I think it's harmful to recommend just one book to people.
Yeah,
I think it's harmful.
I get it.
And if I recommend books and people can't get the books, if I have 2 copies, I will give them away. I don't lend books. I give a book away if I think I can afford to lose it. And I'm really lucky because I've written book reviews and I edit and stuff. People send me free books all the time, so sometimes I have more than one, and that's really good.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Yeah. That's right. So this is a personal question. What genres of writing do you think we need to explore more in?
What kind of writing do I think you need to explore?
From your Yes, what genres? Yeah.
What you mean as in writers?
Like, I mean, maybe it's as in writers, what genre is underrepresented? I think that would be a better way.
Well, you see, do you know what? I actually don't think that on the continent we need to be encouraged to write any more genres. I just think we need to be encouraged to be ourselves. Because if we are ourselves, we are exploding every freaking genre you can imagine. You know, just by people writing the way that we speak, you'd be writing in. Have you thought about what you're doing, son? You're twice her weight. No, she asked you to. Are you not more intelligent than she is at the moment? Just by virtue of being older? Don't do that, Afiba. So, sorry. Now, if we speak about intimacy, the way we do in our languages, we won't need to write erotica. Do you understand?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think if we are ourselves, there is nothing that we won't be creating, and we will redefine how literature is spoken about. We'll redefine how literature is spoken about, because what the thing is if you keep saying how do we do erotica, how do we do science fiction, etc., then we're not creating. We are trying to park in somebody's garage. You know, and maybe we don't want to go up into something for cars. That's the thing. And so I just believe that people should be more themselves. And this is why I constantly recommend for people writing in English, because I've mainly done workshops for people writing in English. I say to them, read Latin America, because the way they've taken the Spanish and they use it is like, if we did that with English, I mean, the stuff we'd be creating would be crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to wrap up and save the video. Apparently, have we done an hour?
Yeah, almost. But then,
Almost.
yeah, there's this other question. Azukizwa wants to know, why haven't you considered publishing the English version of Azuka with the publishing house you run?
With the publishing house where?
You run. You're a publisher. So why haven't you considered publishing it yourself?
I don't publish myself. It's just a personal rule. So it's being done as a limited edition in Ghana, and that's just really for because the French and Spanish publishers need to have a published edition before they can release their edition. And then the edition, as I said, there's a conversation going on, so we'll see.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I think it's been a great time. We would have to wrap up now. And,
no problem.
It's been great having you. Do you have any last words? But before, you can give us your last words, and after you end the video and save it. Please remember to save it. Yeah.
I think our conversation, especially as I'm a writer, and you are also writers and readers, our conversation is ongoing, so there's never a last word. We'll continue this conversation. All I want to say to people is, for those of you who are creating, create with courage. Be yourselves. Just don't write straight, write crooked. I say this all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
We are such a multifaceted people, and it should be reflected in our work.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
All right.